The solar wind swept clean this planet 4.5 billion years ago. Earth thrived. Its natural elements helped it to flourish, and its bounty was for all to share. Then a life form of superior intelligence evolved, and for a while lived in harmony with the Earth. But paradise has been put into jeopardy. The motives are irrelevant. The consequences, severe. The remedy is written. The elements of life are clear.
In this edition of Elements, Mexican environmentalists call on the government to clamp down on illegal fishing to save native sea turtles from extinction, while in Malaysia, an illegal haul of leatherback turtles has landed a Vietnamese crew in a lot of hot water. Wasabi, the aromatic green relish that accompanies Japanese sushi, has become familiar to global gourmets in the last few years. But not many people know about the plant itself, while researchers are only now unlocking some of its culinary and medical secrets. While some of the grandest space adventures ever proposed have actually been given the green light, small problems such as sustaining life for long-term travel still need to be resolved, and these are the scientists who are doing just that. And we'll find out what makes these people believe they're possessed by wild animal spirits. But first, the Rio Earth Summit, which put in place a program for creating sustainable development to cut poverty and protect the world's environment. A decade on, and environmental campaigners are impatient about the slow rate of change. The Worldwide Fund for Nature organised its own international conference and announced that time was running out. It's estimated that more than 1 billion people in the world live in poverty, and the international fight against it is linked with protecting the environment. The World Wildlife Fund believes industrialised countries should bear more responsibility for developing nations. The local impact of traffic pollution on our daily lives is well known to city dwellers, while the conference also encouraged people to consider the excessive use of their power consumption on developing countries. This year has already seen resistance from world leaders to implementing agreed cuts in greenhouse gas emissions, delays we can ill afford. On a brighter note, Britain's beaches have become an environmental success story. Resorts like Bournemouth on the coast of southern England consistently win awards for cleanliness and for their excellent facilities. It's partly due to initiatives such as the Seaside Awards, which were introduced in 1992 by the Tidy Britain Group. The Seaside Awards website lists the 308 best beaches. 10 years ago, just 92 beaches were good enough to receive an award. Many beaches were in a sorry state then, suffering from litter and water pollution. But water pollution remains an area of concern, as Britain doesn't always receive enough sunlight to kill off bacteria in the ocean. The Tidy Britain Group says that no one is pretending that all the problems have been solved on Britain's beaches, but the time has come to stop the criticism and celebrate all that's been achieved so far. Sushi is no longer just a local delicacy enjoyed only by the Japanese. In many cities around the world, you will find devotees enjoying slices of raw fish with sticky rice. While diners are becoming more familiar with the different types of sushi, they often know wasabi by its Western name, Japanese horseradish, although it's neither horseradish nor a radish. Wasabi japonica, the scientific name, is related to the canola plant, and its most used part is the thick lower stem, often mistaken for its root. Traditionally, it's grated with a shark skin grater into a fine paste that is smooth, soft and aromatic. Its most noted quality is a piquant aroma that stings the nose briefly before mellowing into a bittersweet aftertaste. At the Wasabi Experimental Station, 130 kilometers south of Tokyo, daily tests are conducted to crossbreed hybrids and find new species. But here, as in research centers across the nation, knowledge of the beneficial properties of wasabi is constantly expanding. According to Toshio Iyama, head of the Experimental Research Station, wasabi has even been found to be an effective natural germicide agent. But even below the towering peak of Mount Fuji, where the plant has grown for generations, farming wasabi crops is no easy task. Wasabi can be grown on dry earth, but it is best produced with clear-running spring water maintained at a very specific and strict temperature. Trees are often planted in the field to provide a subtle amount of shade to protect the plant from direct sunlight in the summer. At 1,000 yen, or $8 US, a stalk at current market prices is considered a valuable cash crop, especially in mountainous regions where rice cannot grow. Naoshi Shioya and his cooperative team of 40 families have been tilling their 2-kilometer-long wasabi field for decades now. The Ikadaba fields are famed for producing one of Japan's most prized variety, the slightly blue-green Azuma. But Shioya's livelihood is being threatened by cheap imports and modern food processing methods. Taiwanese and Filipino farmers have latched onto the wasabi craze and are turning over vast acreage to wasabi production at a fraction of the price. However, their products are considered too pungent to be eaten alone, but are heavily imported by large Japanese corporations to make what is called neri wasabi, a mix of wasabi and other condiments such as white radish and spices to make the popular versions found now in most homes and restaurants in Japan. Not all wasabi research has been scientific, though. At the Shirakabe Inn, chefs have been experimenting with the culinary aspects of this relish. They've succeeded in making wasabi into a spice that can be incorporated into Western-style recipes. The owner of the inn, Madame Ukuku Uda, considers herself a wasabi ambassador and has sought to popularize her favorite dishes by moving away from the traditional. As the culture of wasabi moves into the global age, its advocates hope to find both scientific and culinary breakthroughs that will allow it to beat the processed versions that have now infiltrated the market. There are few sushi restaurants overseas that serve real wasabi, but one taste of it, or Hanama wasabi, can awaken an appetite for this once little valued relish. A virtual reconstruction center has opened in Jerusalem, allowing visitors to explore ancient parts of the city as they might have appeared 2,000 years ago. Located at the entrance to the excavation site at the southwest corner of Jerusalem's Temple Mount complex, the Ethan and Marla Davidson exhibition is not as much a museum as an orientation center. It gives the visitor a way to learn about the history and archaeology of Jerusalem, especially the Temple Mount area, with the help of modern technology. After viewing a highly detailed scale model of the ancient city and watching a video documenting 150 years of excavations in the area, visitors are led into an 8-meter-high theater where they can view a unique high-definition 10-minute digital video describing Jewish pilgrimage during the Second Temple period.
Talk about the technology more than I do, that renders the frames as we go, and then we can choose wherever.
The video combines footage of the Temple Mount as it stands today and images from a virtual reconstruction model of how it would have appeared 2,000 years ago.
This is all based on the archaeological evidence.
Built by the urban simulation team at UCLA and the Israel Antiquities Authority, The model allows visitors to interact with the virtual environment and experience the splendor of the Temple Mount enclosure in its heyday. A highlight of the facility is a three-dimensional real-time visual reconstruction model of the Herodian Temple Mount as it stood prior to its destruction in the year 70 CE. Probably the most imposing part of the model are the walls, some as much as 35 meters high. During Herod's reign, the upper city was the residential quarter of the Jerusalem aristocracy and priestly families. The upper agora, surrounded by porticos, was the forum, the place where citizens assemble for business. Another gathering place, this one on the Temple Mount, was the Royal Hall, built by Herod, one of the largest buildings in the Roman Empire. In an attempt to impart an even greater affinity for the times, visitors are invited to tour an exhibition of recently excavated archaeological objects from the very period depicted in the virtual animated model. Malaysian fishery officials examined the hulls of 2 fishing boats recently and found dead leatherback turtles among the catch of fish. Known as penyu to the Malays, the leatherback turtles can grow to 1,400 pounds, making them one of the largest and most enigmatic of reptiles. Some biologists even feel they merit a unique classification, but at the very least, they deserve to live in peace. The Malaysian Navy caught the 26 Vietnamese fishermen at a shoal near Shallow Tail Reef, part of the disputed Spratly Island chain that's claimed by Malaysia, Brunei, China, Vietnam and the Philippines, as the chain is believed to have huge oil and gas reserves. Drift nets were seized on the boats and 1.5 metric tons of fish were found, including the turtles. The waters off Shallow Tail Reef are rich in marine life and a magnet for fishing crews from the region. According to the Fisheries Department Chief, Abdul Rahman Wahab, the fishermen will be charged with netting leatherback turtles, which are protected under Malaysian law. Sadly, the turtles were already dead when the ships were boarded and seized. In related news, an international coalition of sea turtle conservationists, known as Group of 100, announced recently that sea turtles, which are native to the Gulf of Mexico, run the risk of extinction due to predatory fishing. The group chose Easter week to begin their campaign, as it's traditionally the peak time of year for sea turtles to be eaten in the region, due to the fact that many Catholics abstain from consuming red meats. Of the 8 different species of sea turtles, 7 visit Mexican waters. Satellite tracking has shown researchers that the nesting population is dropping by 22% per year. Group of 100 has asked for increased protection and enforcement of environmental laws, which designate the Baja area as a feeding reserve for the sea turtles. G100 President Homero Arigius said the situation in the Californias threatens sea turtle populations as far away as Hawaii and Japan. On a slightly happier note, thousands of baby olive ridley turtles have begun to make their journey from India's eastern coast to the sea, boosting hopes that the reptiles will be pulled back from the brink of extinction. Officials estimate that about 200,000 baby turtles crawled out of eggs laid on the sandy shores of Orissa, one of the world's largest nesting grounds, and took their first tentative steps towards the sea. Every year as winter rolls around, the endangered olive ridleys move in large groups to 3 major nesting sites along the Orissa coast before returning to the sea. The olive ridley turtle grows up to 75 centimeters in length and is found in tropical regions of the Pacific, Atlantic and Indian Oceans. According to conservationists, the coast of Orissa is one of the few sites in the world where these turtles prefer to breed. Killing or capturing of the olive ridley is banned under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. The offence invites imprisonment of a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 6 years. In addition, the Orissa Marine Fisheries Act of 1982 prohibits fishing by mechanised trawlers within 6 miles of the coastline, but the laws are often ignored. As soon as the turtles begin to hatch, the volunteers begin their work. They collect the small creatures and place them safely into the sea. Left to fend for themselves, most of the hatchlings would be eaten by crows or jackals before reaching open water. Over 1 million turtles made their ritual trek to the nesting sites to dig sand pits and lay eggs this season. Last year, around 700,000 turtles came ashore, but there was no mass nesting in 1997 or 98. Wildlife experts warn, however, the rejoicing could be premature because hatchlings still suffer from high mortality rates. But at least now they're being given the best chance of survival that we can offer. America's future space program has been set. The International Space Station in low Earth orbit, a permanent base on the lunar surface, and before the year 2020, a manned mission to Mars. Among many challenges to be met in achieving these goals is an efficient, reliable way to provide spacefaring crews with fresh air, clean water, and nutritious food. Carrying enough of these vital supplies on board would be costly and in many cases impossible, especially for lengthy missions. Seeking alternatives, researchers around the country, including a group at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, Florida, are developing a system where plants recycle air, water and waste, as well as provide a source of food. Growing plants in a water-based nutrient solution eliminates the need to carry heavy soil into space. The work of Dr. Steve Schwarzkopf, an engineer at Lockheed in California, demonstrates how important it is to control the content of the nutrient solutions. He's discovering that when tomatoes and lettuce are grown in the same solution, the lettuce doesn't fare very well. He believes the tomatoes could be hogging all the nutrients for themselves. Researchers at the Johnson Space Center in Houston are growing plants in soil similar to that on the lunar surface. Their test chamber allows them to work at reduced atmospheric pressures, likely to be used in habitats on the Moon and on Mars. The JSC team is also working to adapt physical-chemical systems from the Apollo and Shuttle programs to recycle onboard breathing air. Dr. Mark Kliss at NASA's Ames Research Center in Mountain View, California, is integrating other recycling subsystems in a facility called the Salad Machine. Air circulated through a growth chamber collects moisture released by leaves. This air is then drawn through an opening in the rear of the chamber and piped into a condenser which removes the water. Preliminary analysis indicates that this recovered water is drinkable. Impure or grey water could be used to grow the plants, whilst being purified at the same time. Recycling in space, enlisting the expertise of some of the brightest scientists and engineers on this planet to someday support life on others. In the villages of the Haran Plain in southeastern Turkey, among the fields of cotton and wheat, time-honoured traditions have always played an important role. One tradition that's been strictly observed by the women of these parts is the tattooing of their bodies. It's a practice that has passed from generation to generation for many centuries. Tattoos are used to depict a variety of things, from the marital status of a woman to her hopes for prosperity and good fortune. Master tattooist Semsi Alptekkin, who has many tattoos herself, uses traditional methods to dye the skin. Today she's using her skills on one of the village's single girls in the hope she will find a husband. Soot mixed with mother's milk is placed onto the skin and scratched in with a nail. The markings are then left undisturbed for up to 2 days to allow the tattoo to stabilise. Once completed, these dots on the forehead will indicate the woman is unmarried but would like to be. Tattoos on the hands often boast of the social status of the woman's family, while a triangle on the cheeks represents the wish for prosperity. The number of brothers a woman has can be learned by counting the dots behind her ring finger, and the little finger indicates the number of sisters. In very early times, this was all part of the Bedouin culture. But as there is no real place for it in the religion of Islam, there's been a dwindling interest in the practice. That's hardly the case in Thailand, though, where the art of permanently marking the skin is growing in popularity. In a muddy courtyard in front of majestic temples, they gather, their bodies covered in ornate tattoos which they believe protect them from harm. During this 3-hour ordeal, the men say they become possessed by their tattoo spirit, which causes them to turn into some kind of animal. In a trance-like state, many of them charge through the crowd towards the head monk. Every year, men from across the country travel to the central province of Nakhon Pratom to be given tattoos from local monks. Each marking represents a certain animal god, which offers them protection. Those already blessed with the ancient markings return annually and pay their respects to the temple's master tattooist, who they believe has magic powers. Local temple workers are on hand to help control the men, but at times, spectators become caught up in the chaos. Despite the crazy appearance of the ceremony to outsiders, those taking part in the event say it's very serious. "Sometimes I just become like that and I can't control myself," said one follower, who claims he survived a serious car accident a few years ago because his tattoo spirit protected him. The few tourists who brave the rain and chaos say it's a spectacle worth seeing firsthand. The ceremony comes to a dramatic conclusion as the head monk sprays magic water over the crowd. The gesture causes hundreds of devoted followers to charge towards the stage where he's standing. The promise of a final blessing too much for many to bear. That brings us to the end of this edition of Elements. We look forward to your company next time.